Welcome to the Mission Center for Sustainability Solutions. My name is David Hart. I'm the director here. It's great to have you with us. For those of you, there are many wonderful partners from across campus who are co-sponsoring these talks, if you look at the slide here. And this speaks volumes about the deep commitment to collaboration that is one of this university's great strengths. It's my pleasure. I'm going to do a short version of something that could take me several hours to introduce today's speakers. Dr. Sharon Klein, Dr. Caroline Noblet, Dr. Cressica Brazier, and Jasmine Lamb, who will no doubt deserve to be called Dr. Lamb before too long.
Yeah.
For a number of years, I've had a front row seat from which to watch this team's amazing dedication to helping communities that are striving to achieve greater energy security and become more resilient in the face of extreme weather. As they'll explain, one of their core strategies, community-based participatory research, is the embodiment of the team's commitment to working with partners. They've been traveling the state to meet communities where they are. Slowly but surely, they are building an extraordinary network of mutual support, the Maine Community-Led Energy and Climate Action Network, or MaineCAN. This kind of community engagement involves a lot of deep listening, and that's exactly what Senator Mitchell has said is a key to solving complex problems. So please join me in welcoming Sharon, Caroline, Cressica, and Jasmine to our Sustainability Talk series.
Thank you, David, for that wonderful introduction. So as you can see here, we have 4 speakers for this talk today, but we actually have quite a much larger team. So those in the audience who are on our team, if you feel comfortable raising your hand, we can just recognize you. Thank you so much for coming and for everything that you do. We had a hard time figuring out who was going to, speak on behalf of us, and if we all spoke, it would just take too much time. So I just wanted to recognize all of our wonderful students and other employees that have been working on this project with us. It's been a real team effort. Hang on. There we go. Okay. So the broad goals of this work are to examine the role of statewide networks in advancing community-initiated and engaged sustainable energy action in underserved communities. Also, to support community-led sustainable energy and resilience efforts in Maine's rural communities and in the Wabanaki nations. And to increase equity and representation in climate and energy planning and decision-making across the state and in underserved communities. We're doing this through a research paradigm called community-based participatory research, or CBPR. This is considered an emerging research approach, but I think by many standards, there might be many researchers who think this is an approach that has been around a long time, especially possibly in the field of anthropology. But basically, this approach involves equally involving researchers and, quote, the community. So the community can be multiple different people depending on the context of the research. So for example, it could be actual citizens in a particular community. It could be agency representatives from a local, state, or federal agency, nonprofit organizations, businesses. But in any case, CBPR involves involving whoever the community is in an equal partnership in all facets of the research process. So it empowers these community groups to collaborate in research to appreciate and address the complex social, cultural, political, and structural factors impacting the lives of individuals and their communities. It's participatory, it's cooperative, it's a co-learning process. It involves systems development and local community capacity building. It's an empowering process, and it strives to achieve a balance between research and action. So we are applying CBPR across the space that is climate mitigation and climate adaptation. And we're more on the sustainable energy side, so kind of falling under the climate mitigation bucket of things. So we're really focused on renewable energy, energy efficiency, energy storage, microgrids, beneficial electrification. But a lot of our work also touches on what is traditionally considered climate adaptation, or responding to challenges like rising sea levels, extreme temperatures, storms, flooding, erosion, wind damage, drought, wildfires. And we're also really interested where these two intersect. For example, backup electricity options for power outages, resilience hubs powered by sustainable energy, heat pumps for heating and cooling centers. I started to work in this space back in 2015 when I started to wonder, what is community energy? And I kind of started down a long path to figure out what that term that I kept hearing everywhere meant. And it led me mostly to be looking at the term community solar and community energy efficiency or community weatherization. So on the community solar side, I soon learned that there are a lot of types of what could be called community solar. Some of them are owned by communities, and some of them are owned by developers who come into communities and want the community to participate. And there's community aspects of each parts of those types of approaches. And so I've done some research on that side. And then under the community energy efficiency side, I got involved in 2015 with the nonprofit organization Window Dressers, a nonprofit organization that grew out of Rockland, Maine, and now serves Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. And they support local volunteers in coordinating what they call window insert builds. So this is an effort where neighbors are working together to build these window inserts that you see here on right here. They go inside existing windows to reduce heat loss. So volunteers will train people who come in, other volunteers and people who are ordering the inserts to build these, and then they can take them home and they can put them in their windows and reduce heat loss. So I started in 2015 getting my students involved in designing and implementing these window insert builds in the Bangor area and doing research about them to find out how much energy do these inserts save? How much money do they save? What is the social cost in terms of volunteering and the benefits, in terms of comfort and that kind of thing. And then in 2020, I started to really hone in on, in the community energy space, this concept of energy equity and justice. So broadly speaking, equity is using custom tools that address different inequalities. And justice is fixing systems to offer equal access to tools and opportunities. In the space of energy, a lot of what we consider energy equity and justice is rooted in environmental justice. So there can be harms that the way that we use energy cause to people. And sometimes those harms will happen to certain people and not other people. But also in the energy space, there are a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of renewable energy options. There's a lot of energy efficiency options. There's a lot to learn about conserving energy. And those are all benefits that sometimes certain people have access to, and sometimes certain people don't have access to. And so since 2020, I've been kind of studying that topic in terms of what do we know about how people access energy from an equitable and just standpoint. And so this work kind of piloted in 2021 with a project where I worked with folks from Penobscot Nation, a Wabanaki tribe here in Maine. And this work was supported by the Mitchell Center. Thank you, Mitchell Center. And we did a pilot window insert build with Penobscot Nation and also studied, we did some surveys and we did some interviews about what folks from Penobscot Nation thought about various different energy options and about their involvement with the window insert build to kind of think about, could a window insert build be a catalyzing event that could cause this community to then take other renewable energy and energy efficiency action? And I was very lucky during that time to be able to hire Jasmine Lamb as my undergraduate research assistant. She's there putting the finishing touches on a window insert. And she decided to extend the surveys and interviews to the Passamaquoddy tribe at Pleasant Point. So then Jasmine and I entered on a great adventure together where we had just learned about this community resilience partnership that the state of Maine started in December of 2021. And this looked like a really great opportunity for communities to get support for the type of sustainable energy projects that we knew that they may want to do, and for some of the climate resilience projects that they wanted to do. So we got together with Penobscot Nation and the Passamaquoddy tribe and others to see if folks wanted help in enrolling in this partnership so that they could get the benefits that the partnership was offering. And so from 2022 up through now, we've been working with most of the Wabanaki tribes and many rural communities in Maine to help them enroll in the state's program so that they can access funds that the state puts out for climate resilience and sustainable energy. And that led us to this kind of larger project. So now Jasmine is a PhD student working with me on all of this. And we have a big team. We've got some master's students, some undergraduate research assistants, some full-time temporary employees. And we're basically focused on this big question of how can statewide networks of communities that are taking action on climate resilience and sustainable energy support each other in this process of achieving their own goals. So we have a national study, we have a state pilot study that focuses on Maine, and we have a community pilot study. And so we are going to talk a little bit about each of these today. So the national study is really inspired by the Vermont Energy Climate Action Network. This is a program out of the Vermont Natural Resources Council that's a collaborative effort with Efficiency Vermont and other organizations in Vermont, and has been operating since, I always want to say 2010, but I think it might have been earlier than that. So I apologize to those who started VCAN, but it's been around a long time. And since 2015, I've been watching it really unite Vermont communities in terms of helping to support their goals. And I've especially seen this through window dressers. Since 2018, I've actually been on the board of directors of window dressers. And I've seen how the organization has gone on to serve Vermont communities and how fast the uptake has been because of VCAN, because of the network that they have. So VCAN is a network that helps communities find each other, helps them find resources to do the work that they want to do. It helps them learn from each other. So they have an annual conference and they have different events throughout the year and a lot of resource sharing. So basically, I started to wonder, could we have something like this in Maine? And I also wanted to know, where else does this exist? So the national study that we're doing is looking at, can we find other VCANs across the country? And they might be named totally different things. So a lot of this is Google search, trying out different search terms, seeing if we can find a statewide network in each state that does something like what VCAN is doing in Vermont. And my master's student put together this slide. This shows that in blue, the leans, so the term lean is something that I invented. It means Local Energy Action Network. And so we're looking for what we are calling local energy action networks across the country, and exploring how, if we find these leans, how are they supporting underserved communities? We're comparing different outreach strategies that they have. We're trying to understand the collaborations that they've set up and that they're using. We're trying to compare different peer-to-peer learning approaches, and compare community-led renewable energy and energy efficiency approaches. And so we have in the kind of turquoise color, potential liens that have been identified. So we kind of have been doing this internet search to find, this looks like it could be a lien. And then we go and we interview them to find out, how closely they're operating similar to VCAN basically, and what else they might be doing that maybe VCAN isn't doing. So that leads me to the state pilot study, and I think it's time for me to turn it over to Dr. Brazier.
Thank you, Sharon. So as Dr. Klein just explained, the first part of our state level study also draws inspiration from the national liens, especially VCAN. And so that's as our team is helping to build a similar network for Maine. So the process of developing this network, MaineCan, started long ago, but it picked up steam in 2021 when Dr. Klein started meeting with community leaders and other collaborators to gauge interest and to find out who might help build and lead such a network. These early supporters said, yes, we need this in Maine. So they gave us the green light to Dr. Klein and our team to start the groundwork with the support of the Mitchell Center. And you can hear about this journey in Dr. Klein's Mitchell Center talk from 2023. This led to a series of scoping meetings over the past 2 years, through which more than 50 leaders from communities and nonprofits and government agencies helped co-develop the vision and the goals and the possible online tools that could support community action and networking. Then we officially launched the network at the Maine Sustainability and Water Conference in March of last year and started signing up members. I came on board 6 months ago in August, and since then we've been conducting more outreach and preparing to launch MaineCan's web presence. We held meetings with allies of the network in December and a meeting of communities in January. So the partners in the 2023 and 2024 scoping meetings voted to name the network MaineCan, the Maine Community-Led Energy and Climate Action Network. The goal is to build a network of communities so they can connect with each other, as well as a network of allies across the state that provide support for these communities. We hope MaineCan can be a central location that communities can turn to find support for reaching their goals of becoming more resilient to climate change and making the transition to sustainable energy and energy efficiency. So these scoping meetings in the past 2 years also produced 7 main community needs that MaineCan might be able to support. These range from project-specific assistance, like scoping and finding funding and implementation partners for energy and resilience projects, to organizing, networking, and educational opportunities, especially when it comes to forming and sustaining community climate groups. A lot of members also asked for specific examples of successful projects in Maine, like community energy plans and how-to guides, which will facilitate peer-to-peer learning among communities, in addition to us curating a broader resource database. Finally, we're developing a contact list and map to help members discover potential sources of support and shared interests. So, to develop MaineCan's community support ecosystem, we're defining 3 ways to be part of MaineCan that, taken together, encompass anyone who is interested in energy and resilience action at the community level. The heart of MaineCan is the network of people taking action in their own communities, which can include municipal or tribal officials, grassroots citizen groups, or individual community members at any stage of action. MaineCan welcomes all kinds of initiatives, from formal to informal. The second way of participating is allies, who are people and entities supporting or considering supporting initiatives in other communities. Partners are taking on the additional role of collaborating to build this network. They're helping with governance, and they're providing programming for the whole MaineCan network. Of course, there's overlap between all of these roles, and any member can decide how they want to fit in. So members start participating by completing the MaineCan intake survey. And so far, we've had 96 people join. So our membership now looks like this. In the community network, four tribal nations have joined, along with 13 municipal representatives and 18 community groups. Our allies also include 11 individuals and 46 organizations. 17 of these organizations are partners that are really involved in the planning and governance of MaineCan right now. Through the MaineCan intake survey, we're also learning a lot about the interests and needs of the community network. With the 31 communities that have provided input so far, all are already taking action on energy and resilience initiatives, with energy efficiency and community engagement being two of the most frequent actions. The long-term interests of these communities are distributed among focus areas like renewables, transportation, food and agriculture, protecting land and coasts, and flood and emergency management. But for their near-term needs, their interest in getting help for renewable energy projects and interconnection really stands out. So we are looking at these needs to guide how we can work together with communities and allies to develop these areas of possible support and add new areas. To do this, it's crucial that we create spaces where communities and allies can interact and benefit from the network. So far, we're working on 6 ways to keep everyone informed and engaged, starting with a newsletter and a Google group to which members can share info, ask for advice, or find collaborators from the whole MaineCan community. We also have a direct email and voicemail box to the support team. And we have had that series of virtual meetings, as well as we're going to be hosting the MaineCan annual meeting as a session at the upcoming Maine Sustainability and Water Conference on March 27th, which Dr. Klein will tell you more about soon. And finally, we're developing a website that will help all members and the public make connections and access resources. This is a MaineCan team effort to build this website so that we can more quickly adapt to the needs of the communities and allies. First, we'll have different ways to explore the members in the network, their shared interests, and their support that they can provide to communities, including on this network map. We also have a database of curated resources, including Maine-specific guides that are contributed by members. And we'll be aggregating relevant events from our members and from across Maine to share them more widely. So we welcome anyone interested in community energy and resilience action to join the MaineCan network. And please share the link to this sign-up survey far and wide. You can find the sign-up survey now at the website, mainecan.network. So in addition to studying the MaineCan network building process, we're also conducting at least 10 interviews per year over 3 years. These interviews include a mix of communities that are and are not enrolled in Maine Community Resilience Partnership, or CRP, and that are listed as having high or medium to low social vulnerability on the Social Vulnerability Index that was developed by researchers at Bowdoin College and used by the CRP. We're also interviewing allies, who are the entities supporting community energy initiatives across the state. These in-depth interviews help us broaden our understanding of how participants are thinking about alternative energy initiatives and their barriers and decision drivers for projects such as solar, energy efficiency, and electrification. So far, we've interviewed 3 allies and representatives of 10 towns, mostly comparing Washington and Aroostook counties. So in towns not yet enrolled in the CRP, all interviewees said they didn't really have the capacity to join the CRP, or to think about alternative energy initiatives, in part because these projects were outside of their day-to-day activities. They were also taking into consideration their perception of resident skepticism of energy projects and sensitivity to cost, especially due to rising taxes. But we were surprised to find that as they discussed their needs with us, all of the non-enrolled communities voiced that they would consider joining the partnership to access the community action grants, likely because the CRP would allow them to pursue infrastructure improvements that are needed as part of their day-to-day activities. So our preliminary findings point to the potential effectiveness of allies and of leading with infrastructure and resilience projects as a pathway to helping Maine towns build capacity to take on alternative energy projects. All of these communities were also amenable to joining an information sharing network like Maine can.
Hi, everyone. So this is a visual representation of the social network analysis that our team did on the Maine Can network. And for anyone who is not familiar with social network analysis, the purpose is to examine relationships between different actors in a network. So Cressica, or mostly Cressica, made this awesome social network analysis on Kumu. And if you want, you can go to the link for the more interactive version of it, and you can zoom in and see where your own organization might be located. So for in a social network analysis, these little circles are called nodes and they represent different types of organizations. This is our key for the types of organizations we have represented here. And the lines between the nodes are called edges, and they can explain the different types of relationships that networks have with each other. So for the purpose of our Maine Can network, we wanted to see what are the different relationships between maybe municipalities who have received CRP grants and how they're collaborating with other municipalities or tribal governments, and also funding, where they're receiving funding from, and yeah, any other ways that they're collaborating with other actors in the network. So this social network analysis is based partially on the survey that Kreska just showed on the previous slide, and also based on publicly available documents through the Community Resilience Partnership. So on the left here, you can see a lot of the municipalities and the tribal governments that have entered the Community Resilience Partnership. On the actual map, you can zoom in and see what types of projects they're collaborating with each other on. And then on the right, you can see the Maine Can part of the network, and all of the many different organizations that Maine Can is connected to. And then here we just have a closer look at the social network analysis results. So on the left, you can see the University of Maine. And when a node has higher centrality, it means that it has more connections. So you can see that the University of Maine is a more central node. And yeah, so they have higher interconnections with other nodes. And then also on the right here, you can see A Climate to Thrive, which is one of the earliest and most active members of the Maine Can network. So you can see the many different connections A Climate to Thrive has, which shows their high centrality within the network. So these types of things, the social network analysis helps us with our research objectives, which are to understand the barriers, opportunities, and decision drivers for renewable energy and energy efficiency adoption within underserved communities. So, for example, when we're able to examine the centrality of different nodes, like A Climate to Thrive, it's a more central node, so that indicates that they can disperse information more efficiently than a less central node. And also with the network as a whole, we can see which organizations are collaborating with each other, which organizations maybe have lower levels of interconnection with the rest of the network, and we can kind of examine how we can embed them more in the Maine Can network. So yeah, those are the key results of the social network analysis that we've done. And I'm going to pass it off to Sharon.
Thank you, Jasmine and Cressica. So rounding out our state pilot study, we're using, or we're happy to be allowed to use, the Maine Sustainability and Water Conference as the annual convening for Maine Can while we're doing this research and getting Maine Can off the ground. Eventually, I think Maine Can will probably have its own annual gathering, but right now it's such a wonderful conference that the Mitchell Center puts on every year that we're very excited to be part of that and to be able to showcase Maine Can there. So last year in 2024, the Maine Sustainability and Water Conference was a place where we did a special full day session where we actually launched Maine Can officially. So that's where we actually launched the first, version, well, the first intake survey. We haven't revised it yet, but we're thinking about that. And we convened people who were interested in Maine Can, who'd been involved in the scoping discussions earlier. We invited folks from communities that were taking action in the areas of sustainable energy and climate resilience. And so one of our participants from Van Buren had great things to say about the 2024 session. And we're planning another session with a bunch of collaborators. We have a bunch of co-chairs, not only on our own team here at UMaine, but other people not at UMaine who are part of the Maine Can network and who've been involved in a lot of those earlier scoping sessions to help build up what Maine Can is now. And so the focus on March 27th at the Augusta Civic Center will be about what is Maine Can and how can it help community-driven energy and climate resilience initiatives. We're going to have a panel about networks within the network, because there's a lot of people doing a lot of things, bringing people together about certain topics that kind of fit under the umbrella of what Maine Can is trying to bring together. We're going to have a panel session about peer-to-peer learning and some breakout discussions. We're going to have we're going to highlight some community projects and panels and breakout discussions about a whole bunch of different topics that are important to communities. And so we kind of have a lightning round about how to get funding and other capacity building support for community-led initiatives and some breakout discussions around that. And we're also going to use this as a time for some Maine Can planning discussions. So we're hoping that some of the partners who are really invested in what Maine Can is going to become are going to come to those discussions and help us figure out things like, how should we govern Maine Can? How should we make it sustainable, for the future in terms of funding and things like that? So more information on that website that you see there, and we hope that you all come to our session. And then the third piece of the study is the community pilot study. So broadly speaking, what we're doing is we are co-designing community engaged research. And practically, we're doing that through some annual surveys with some communities that we're working really closely with. We're working with, and I'll show you actually in a minute who we're working with, but we're also doing interviews, and we're doing a variety of different things that are designed to support the communities that we're working with in reaching their goals. And while we do those, we study the challenges and the successes that are happening with that type of work that we're doing with the communities. So we have what I call a community sustainable energy team, which is comprised of people from 7 different communities in Maine, all rural. And then we also have folks working for the Wabanaki governments. There are 5 Wabanaki governments, and so we meet with the Wabanaki Sustainable Energy Team separately. And so every month we meet with each team, and we co-develop the research together. Like, we talk about what survey questions should we ask? How should we ask this? Is this appropriate? Is that appropriate? And then we talk about, how do you want to get the survey out? How is this going to be useful to you? And should this be a paper survey? Should it be electronic? And do you need help? Sometimes, especially this past summer, we would have people from our team go to events where, like, for example, Penobscot Nation has their community days every August. And so we went and we tabled there with the survey to get paper copies and that kind of thing. So we're really engaged in that work to co-develop the research. And then at the same time, we're talking about, okay, you have this goal to do this. We've found this funding source that you might want to apply for. Maybe you all want to apply together, because then it'll be a stronger application, and we help them through that process as well, and then just help facilitate conversations so that they can learn from each other. So one of our most active communities on the Community Sustainable Energy Team is Millinocket, and there's a wonderful person named Amber Wheaton, who's the Community Initiatives Director there. And so she has been working really hard for years, doing multiple things for Millinocket, one of which is to get heat pumps in municipal buildings and also to replace windows in municipal buildings. And there's also, as you can see from the preliminary results from year one of our community survey with Millinocket, there's a lot of interest in heat pumps in homes there and in solar panels on roofs there. And then this is for, we ask in the survey, what are your priorities for Millinocket? And then we also ask, what are your priorities for your own home, like your own life? And so heat pumps, again, come up as popular there, as well as backup generators powered by gasoline or diesel, and weatherization. And I do just have to say the caveat here, because you may notice that solar didn't come up in the individual one. And that's because we forgot to ask about it for a while. So we learned from our year one survey, and now in year two, when and if we ask this question again, we'll make sure to ask about solar as well. But we can kind of infer from the question before that solar may be popular for homes as well. We just didn't unfortunately ask about it. And then on our Wabanaki Sustainable Energy team, I just wanted to give you a sample too about another set of survey results there, because it's a separate survey because there's unique needs and history for Wabanaki nations. So here are some sample survey results from Penobscot Nation. And you can see that when asked, what are the priorities for you as a tribal citizen for what you want your tribe to do, rooftop solar and heat pumps for homes were also popular with this community. And as individuals, we did ask about solar panels for this survey. Solar panels and heat pumps were also popular for individuals. And again, backup generators and weatherization were popular as well. And they've been doing a lot in Penobscot Nation for solar. And you can see here, I believe this is a picture of the new community center that they're developing, or yeah, I think so. And they've been taking a lot of action in the area of sustainable energy and energy efficiency there. And I will pass it back to Jasmine.
Hello again. I don't know if I really introduced myself the first time, but I'm a second year PhD student in environmental science here, and I will hopefully be a candidate by the end of the semester. So the title of my PhD dissertation is Insights and Best Practices of Tribal Citizen Committees in Advancing Sustainable Energy Transitions and Climate Adaptation. So my dissertation has mixed methods, including a literature review, multiple case studies, surveys and interviews with tribal members, and some of our targeted interventions, or just some of the grants that we've done over the past couple of years. So one of the case studies in my dissertation is the Zweig Resilience Committee. And I'm also going to be incorporating some of the information from the Penobscot Nation Resilience Committee and the Indian Township Resilience Committee that recently started. So for some background on the Zweig Resilience Committee, we founded the SRC in August of 2022, shortly after Sharon and I helped enter the tribe into the Community Resilience Partnership, which is where the funding came from for the SRC. And basically the Zweig Resilience Committee is a small community-based organization that's for members of the Passamaquoddy tribe at Pleasant Point, which I'm a member of. And so the mission of the Zweig Resilience Committee is to advance energy sovereignty and climate change resilience for members of the tribe through citizen action. And recently we changed our mission statement to include so we can enable tribal members to live in more sustainable ways with the environment that are more in accordance with our traditional values as Passamaquoddy people. So you can see this is our flyer for the energy audit program that we did last summer, where we provided free energy audits for tribal members in collaboration with the College of the Atlantic. And then this is my mom and grandfather at our window insert build this year. That was the second one that we did, and that was to weatherize homes of tribal members, especially our elders. And this is Walter Louie. He's on the Zweig Resilience Committee as well. So yeah, and then we're also juggling many other projects too. I didn't even want to try to put them all on one page, but we've been exploring from the first meeting that we had in August of 2022, where community members set their priorities around what they wanted to see from the CRP. So the top three items were weatherization, heat pumps, and renewable energy and solar energy was the preferred method of energy generation. So those are the three things that we've been working on ever since. The housing department is currently working on a heat pump initiative that came from the Wabanaki Sustainable Energy Team, and we are also exploring multiple grants right now for community solar. So that is my dissertation. And now I'll hand it off to Dr. Noblet.
Hi, everybody. I'm Caroline Noblet. So what I think you've heard throughout all of this is that talking with Mainers from a variety of different perspectives is really our jam, right? It's what our team loves to do. And so a really unique opportunity came up where the state of Maine has been engaged in climate action planning. So you heard Sharon talk earlier about there was a 2020 plan, and then there was planning for the 2024 plan. And what a lot of our state leaders realized is that there is a great group of people who are really engaged with climate planning, but that group tends to be small, right? And we want to hear from a lot of different people. And so they reached out to us and said, we'd like to hear from a lot of different voices. And they came up with a list of people that they thought they hadn't heard from. And they wanted to make sure that they had a chance to hear from those folks. And again, because they knew that talking to Mainers was really our thing when we thought about climate resilience and adaptation and mitigation, that collaboration was born. And so in this list, originally, you will see that tribal communities was included. And we're really lucky to have Jasmine and some other awesome Wabanaki scholars that we know, because they were able to say to us, you know, actually, there's some unique things, right? There's a unique history that happens for our Wabanaki people. And so they were able to share with us and the state, because of our collaboration, that there was a strong preference from the Wabanaki nations that there be a government to government interaction when we start talking about climate planning between the tribal nations and the state government. And so one of the outcomes of this original project was to help facilitate and support some of those conversations. And you can see that our state government really followed up with that. And in the Maine Climate Council plan, they have information about engaging with Wabanaki populations. So that was a really great collaboration. With great acknowledgement to some of those Wabanaki scholars that really helped us think through this, Dr. Dan Ranko, Jasmine, Dr. Natalie Michelle, Dr. Tony Sutton, and Ambassador Mullion Bryant, who helped us, all of us, think through these issues. So as we continued to hear from a variety of voices around Maine, we partnered with 21 different organizations around Maine who worked with a lot of different types of people. So you heard David say in the beginning that one thing that's really important when we listen is to meet people where they're at. So these organizations were already engaged with their different populations, and we were able to work with them. So in a pretty condensed time period, because we wanted to be able to contribute to the climate action planning, with these 21 partners, we led 73 direct engagements. So we reached almost 3,000 people. And you can see from some of our maps, the variety of different groups that we worked with, where we were working. And you can see that these engagements involved not only conversations, focus groups, surveys. This is kind of a neat photo that you can see. The post-it board approach, right? Where we sort of ask a big question and each of us bring our individual perspectives onto that board. As part of this, Sharon was mentioning earlier that we were doing surveys statewide, and we were learning a lot about energy and resilience. And so initially, we were only working with certain communities, and in partnering with the state, we made the decision collectively to make it a statewide survey to learn about these issues to then inform, again, the climate action planning. And so you can see that our mission was to reach a lot of different type of Mainers. And so these are a lot of different types of Mainers that we reached. And you can see in our map that we were able to gather people from a variety of zip codes as well. So we had a total of almost 600 responses from folks that were identified as groups we hadn't heard from before in the climate planning. So as we looked through all this data that we had from all of these engagements from our survey, we learned that one of the biggest takeaways is that when we talk about climate strategies, it really need to intersect with people's basic needs. And for some people, for a lot of people, a basic need is heating. And I think a day like today reminds us that that's really important to all of us. And so we heard from a variety of different people about how important that is to them and how there are some programs that really work already to help them meet this basic needs. And then there are needs for more education. And there are some things that they highlighted as being really important to them. So for example, that high price of electricity or heating fuel is a barrier. Jasmine did a great job of saying that one of the goals of our team is to identify these barriers and opportunities. And so this really helped us identify some of the barriers that people are facing in meeting the basic need of heating. I want to highlight again that we're hearing a lot of these overlapping things from a variety of different populations. Sharon mentioned that heat pumps and weatherization had come up before. They came up again, right? So these are really important priorities. As we think about really meeting people where they're at and prioritizing their basic needs, one other thing that came forward was we need to prioritize person-to-person education and capacity building for our municipalities and tribal governments. And so people were saying that you might hear about a heat pump and you hear it's a great thing, but you're not really sure, is it the right choice for you, for your house, right? And so that person-to-person capacity. And so other areas have involved in energy coaching. There's a program called the Energy Circuit Riders, and this allows people to have one-on-one conversations with knowledgeable people about the issues that they're facing. And so that's something that we heard from communities might be a real hit for Maine. And then with respect to this capacity building, this also helps people not only get the knowledge that they need, but it also helps alleviate some of the burden that our municipalities have in trying to do everything, right? And so this was another great learning from the individuals we heard from. You've heard a lot. So sort of trying to pull everything together here. You heard about our wonderful network called Maine Can, right? And the goal of our Maine Can, again, is to be this collaborative structure that pulls together people who want to learn about climate resiliency, climate adaptation, mitigation, right? And everything like meeting people's basic needs. And so those are our goals, and supporting communities, engaging with communities all along the way. Certainly a challenge that everyone faces is long-term funding, right? How do we support this? We also talked with a lot of underserved communities in the state of Maine. They faced a number of challenges, including the ability to finance many of these projects that they might want to do. There might be barriers in trying to access funding because, again, capacity issue. We have these folks who work in towns that are asked to do everything. And so our long-term goal in supporting these communities will be to help them identify opportunities and work together, right? If one town has had a successful project, what can we learn from that? So first of all, a really big thank you to the Mitchell Center, because they've been there for the entire time for these projects, and including supporting us all the way. Our conference, our session at the Maine Sustainability and Water Conference. We're really grateful to all of the community partners. You've heard us talk about a lot of different folks. We're really grateful to them. We're grateful to our Wabanaki partners, the sustainable energy teams, and everyone that's worked with us throughout Maine Can. And the last project where we had the chance to learn even more about the needs of Maine citizens and helping with climate action planning was with the Maine Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the Future. And that was a wonderful opportunity as well. So with that, I think I'm going to stop because we wanted to leave time for questions. And if you have questions, you can reach us at our Maine Can email. Okay, thanks everybody.
This has been one of the most tremendous talks I've heard in all my years of hearing these. And you gave us so many ideas for what we should do. Who do you hope we're going to tell about what we've learned today? What's your hope?
Everyone. I mean, I'll start and I'll say everyone. So for those of you on Zoom, you may not be able to see our audience, but there are a lot of people from the University of Maine community here. And we're really, really happy. We know some of you are here because of extra credit, but you still chose among all your options to come to this. So I would say that personally, I'm really excited to have people younger than me here and enthusiastic.
Can I follow up on that? Great response is different majors are here today listening to the great things that you're saying. There might be people in music, people in education, other things. So how can they get involved? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, one of the great things about this work is how interdisciplinary it is. There we go. So, I think one of the really neat things here at UMaine is that we have so many opportunities for people to learn from other disciplines. So I will just tout my own classes, ECO 180 and ECO 405/505. We have students who come from economics and also engineering and anthropology and environmental science and all over the place who come to those classes. So those are a couple where you can get some interdisciplinary training and new experiences and talk to different people, and then just follow the Mitchell Center, because they are always putting out new things that are about different fields of study, and it's a great way. Come to these talks every week, and just come to the Mitchell Center.
And can I ask, I know there are lots of things, but one more is you mentioned that deep listening is key to what you're doing. Can you give people an example of that, or how do they learn to do deep listening if they haven't yet had a chance to learn that?
That's a really interesting question, because we feel like we know how to listen, but then sometimes we'll go into a room and somebody will start talking. We're like, oh yeah, I know, like that relates to me in this way. And then we find we're talking about ourselves. And so I think really deep listening just starts with being comfortable in silence and in not saying anything about yourself and just literally listening. You know what I mean? And I think coming into a place and just knowing that the people that you're meeting with probably know more about what you're talking about than you do. Even if you do have this great degree in this field or that
Yeah.
field, or you've been studying this for so long, you're coming to learn about their experiences, and they're the experts on their experiences. So just really coming with that open mind to
Wonderful.
sit and try to process.
Great.
I would add too, because I think Sharon's done such an awesome job of talking about that process, the repetitiveness, right? Like just kind of like being there once and listening is awesome, but being there throughout time. And that's one of the things that I've
Yeah.
learned from these guys is that continuing to show up is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. One person's asking, how can schools become involved with this? Children, other people, what do you think?
Well, I think the best way is for them to join Can. Because then, we're able to help them connect with other schools and other people doing similar things that
Wonderful.
they're interested in, and help them connect with the resources that Maine Can is growing to be able to offer. So that's one area I would say.
Hey, Linda, could I do a question for the room?
Yeah, I'll stop and you can go ahead.
So thank you for the talk. As we're discussing energy in Maine, we are, of course, an energy importer, including from Canada. And so I know that energy is one of the various topics that could end up being subject to tariffs or taxes from import. Do you anticipate a change in the way communities engage with organizations like Maine Can, as on the one hand, local energy production may become more of a priority, but also they might be exhausting political, social, and economic capital in dealing with sudden changes to their heat or energy situations?
I think it's a really good question. I think we're all really trying to understand what some of the changes in the federal government might mean for everyone. One of the things that we hear a lot from the communities is, again, those basic needs. And so understanding the ramifications of all of this on the basic needs is something that I can't pretend to understand yet, right? But I do think that you have a great point in thinking about how might these communities change, right? But one of the things that we're hearing is their top priority is always the comfort and well-being of their people and their environment, and also sort of understanding how can they work together. So that part, I think, about Maine Can is going to stay the same, where they're going to say, I want to work with my community, I want to learn from other people. How it changes, it's a great question that I can't answer, and I'm sorry.
I just think I'll add, like, we hope that Maine Can, because Maine Can is at the heart, the communities and the allies that are working together will find ways to adapt to any circumstances that come up, you know. So that'll start with our session at the Maine Sustainability and Water Conference when we talk about, you know, like what should our goals be for this coming year and that kind of thing.
Can I do a second question from here?
You bet, you bet.
My question connects more to like getting into communities, because a lot of the time when you're trying to just locate or even communicate and reach out, you have a lot of distrust that's been built over time between, let's just say it's built between politics and misinformation. A lot has been built and politicized around climate. And so when you try and approach a community member, you might be faced with like some amount of like skepticism, or even just, I'm trying to think of the word, just hostility. So how would you do that when you're trying to address that with certain communities that are very insular or afraid of like outside interference?
You guys, so Jessica was a member of a small community for a while, and Jasmine, you were a member of a small community. I don't know if either of you want to say anything about it. You don't have to.
Yeah, I think especially through our like community pilot study, we have encountered that a few times where you know, maybe communities don't want to engage with the community resilience partnership because of the language around climate change adaptation. I think one of the first things that I learned when I started working with Sharon is kind of different ways to mitigate that. And one of the things that brings people together is talking about public health. So instead of centering discussions about climate change, maybe with more rural communities, just thinking of ways we can shift our language that aren't going to exclude anyone from wanting to, you know, interact with us, and just helping people understand the community benefit to doing that, rather than them feeling like we're trying to push some kind of agenda on them. But yeah, especially with the Wabanaki nations, there's definitely, I know it's hard to reach the tribes at sometimes, but a lot of our work, especially with the Wabanaki Sustainable Energy Team, they're members of the tribe and employees of the tribal government coming together. So I think just building community there, and also with our sustainable energy team, and just yeah, connecting people to a wider community maybe helps them feel more comfortable.
And I'll just add, I think this goes back a lot to what Caroline said about showing up repeatedly. I learned very early on in 2018 when I was part of a great project that David Hart brought to me called Future of Dams. I learned from Dr. Bridie McGreevy that if you're going to be working with Penobscot Nation and other Wabanaki tribes, you're going to have to answer the question of, are you in this for the long term, or are you just in this for this project and then you're gone? And for me, that answer was, I'm in this for the long term. And so, you know, I think going in to know for yourself, what is your timeline that you're able to spend with this community, and being open and honest with the community about that.
Well, this is a conversation that not only could go on for a long time, it will go on for a long time, and it should. This is really important work, but I think the final words that were brought forth from a great question, this is work for the long haul. I admire and appreciate your work, and I know you all want to join me in thanking them for